Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this video I am so excited to be reviewing the Storm Collectibles Street Fighter V ZANGIEF, or ZANGIEF, depending on how you want to pronounce his name. This guy is one that's been drawing a lot of attention ever since he was announced. He's supposed to be massive, he's pretty darn big in the game, and so, we're wondering how's he going to turn out in figure form. It's going to be difficult to make him so bulky, it's going to be difficult to just make it in general and keep it at a reasonable price point. Now, he does cost a little bit more than the others, but I think it paid off. This figure is highly impressive in many, many ways. There are definitely a few issues that we're going to have to talk about. That's what we do here in these reviews. We make sure we talk about as much as we can in as much detail as we can. But I'm going to tell you right now, overall, I am thoroughly impressed with this figure. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands, and you can see he's not perfectly straight up and down. I have his legs opened up just a little bit, but he stands just about 22 centimeters tall, which makes him just about 8 3/4 inches. And so if you want to see what that looks like compared to the other Street Fighter figures, I have the two main sizes. We have Ryu right here, and then we also have Bison. And I'll adjust the camera so you can see a little better in just a second. So Bison was already a fairly sizable figure, and now ZANGIEF it's very much taller, and I think that is it's awesome. I mean, I thought ZANGIEF was a little bit bigger than this, and I think maybe he is to some extent, because most of the time in the games he's hunched over just a little bit, but I think this is probably close enough. Having Bison in front makes him look taller. Let's do that. There, you can see, I guess perspective would be better. Having him in size, you can see ZANGIEF's definitely a lot bigger, so I'm very, very pleased with that, and he's surely a lot thicker, so mostly pretty darn good. I think that's all right. Again, I do think they probably fudged the scaling just a little bit because he is usually hunched over some in the game, so that does take away some height. Now, before we talk about the figure anymore, let's go ahead and run through the accessories. We have 3 different heads. We have one neutral head that comes on him in the package, one where he just looks really angry and his teeth are showing, and then one where his mouth is open and he's yelling. And this is by far, I think, far and above the best head sculpt they have done or shown us even. It's exactly how I think it should look. It's perfect. I love the head sculpt. We do have a bunch of different hands. We have the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, 2 pointing finger hands, 2 kind of wider open hands, 2 style pose hands, and then 2 karate chop type of hands. We do have 2 effect parts, which would be for the lariat. They're both clear, translucent plastic with some white shading on them. The white shading could be a little more uniform, but I think it's probably okay. And then lastly, we have the display stand, the standard Street Fighter V display stand. So that's all pretty good. We have a lot of good accessories. I would like to mention, and maybe this isn't a thing in Street Fighter V, I don't know, isn't there a move where he turns, like goes backwards and then swings his arm down and his fist turns green, or has like green fire on it? And don't people use that to counter moves or counter projectiles? Isn't that a thing, or is that not a thing in Street Fighter V? Either way, if that's a thing, it would be really cool to have gotten that accessory, but we don't have that. And if it's not a thing, then disregard everything I just said. Okay, so let's talk about this guy. Let's talk about the paint first, because I absolutely love it. It's all very flat or matte plastic. It looks really, really good, especially then where they have the metallic gold and silver on there. It looks nice. The boots are painted incredibly well. The straps are very well done. We have the yellow on there and then the gold at the bottom. The scars and then the hair that's around his body, it's very well done. The scars in particular, but the scars look good. Then the skin has that really nice shading in it. It does have like that little speckly paint job on there that we saw on Ryu. It's probably on Ken as well. I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's just painted really, really nicely. The wristbands are done well enough. And then the sculpt. Here's the thing. When they first showed this guy, I was a little bit worried. It looked to me like his chest was a little bit small. Maybe not necessarily overall too small, though I do think his shoulders probably should be a little bit wider, but it seemed like the chest area was too small, and most of that was probably due to having this butterfly joint type of situation. So I was a little bit worried about that, especially since his lower torso is very large. It's a very bulky figure. And I think that's still true. While it does look a little bit better in hand and once you pose him, his chest still feels off to me, especially the way they have this seam right here, right next to the nipples. I don't think it's not the best looking thing. From the side, it's not so bad because it's definitely bulky enough front to back. But this way, it just looks, something's off about it. I think maybe if they had just blown it out a little bit, pulled his shoulders out a little bit, moved this over, just kind of skewed it a little bit to the side, I think that would have looked a whole lot better. Now again, there's no way, I mean, that's nowhere near deal breaker status. It's a small issue, and once you pose them, it's not that noticeable at all. But I do think that, you know, the people that have voiced the issue about the chest being too small, it's one of the first things I noticed, and it does seem to have made it through production. It's just a small thing. I don't think it's a big deal, and everything else for the figure more than makes up for it, so I'm still very pleased. I mean, you can see, as soon as you turn him to the side, he looks awesome. I mean, it's really, really good. So as long as you don't put him in some completely neutral pose, you should be okay. And even then, it's not too bad. I do really like the way they did the hair. It's just a really soft material and it's connected up here, but it won't get in the way of posing him at all. I know that seems weird, but that's actually a good way to do that. And then also this part is very, very soft, so that's not going to get in the way of posing either. You can rotate him around, no problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and run through the articulation. It's just this same old standard type of ball peg, technically a double ball peg for the head, one for the very top. I'll show you that. And then we have, of course, the other one at the bottom. So you can move that around, and as you can see, the neck is really soft, so you can do that, and it will hold. It's not 100% perfect, but it'll hold a pose just fine. And the neck doesn't even have to really move too much because the peg itself has really good range. But he can move his head just fine. I mean, it's not the most range ever because he's so bulky, but it's still pretty good. I do think maybe his traps could be a little bit bigger too, but it's not that big of a deal. They're still, I think it's okay. It's fine. Now, we do have the same kind of butterfly joint where it's just a big ball peg that goes into the torso for the entire arm. And then we have this piece that just kind of floats around on it. But it's a whole lot more restrictive than before. This piece doesn't quite fit around the shoulder as well as I would have liked. You still get your butterfly joint very nicely, but it doesn't allow you to move up and down at all. Now, I haven't pulled him apart to check, so I'm just assuming it's the same design as before. It's just more restrictive, but I can't say for sure. But you can't raise or lower the arm on that peg. You're going to have to use this joint, which isn't a problem, but I have to point it out. It doesn't have quite the same range as the other figures. But you can see he still has really, really incredibly good range for the shoulder, better than horizontal. And for a really bulky guy, that's fine. That's really, really good. Slight problem on the opposite end of that is that rotating the arm around, as you can see, the shoulder is kind of ovular. It's a lot wider than it is tall. It's a little bit tricky to rotate the shoulder inside that socket. You kind of have to really force it and pull on it. Now, it doesn't feel like anything's going to break or anything like that, and it can be done, but it does take a little bit of force, so be careful. You don't want to just crank on it, because then you might scratch something or whatever, but it'll work. It's in there. It's just very, very stiff. So maybe that's, I'm guessing that's probably a good thing. You don't want it to be too loose. It's just, you know, it's a little bit stiff, so be aware of that. I think it's okay. It's not, doesn't feel like it's going to break or anything. It's just very, very difficult to do that. For the bicep swivel, again, it's very stiff, so be careful. Make sure it's not stuck before you just crank on it. But he has good range. Very, very stiff. I don't know. I'm guessing this is in response to people complaining about loose joints, so I guess that's a good thing. And then we have the double jointed elbow, which gives you just about 90. For a bulky guy like this, I think that's okay. No problems there. The wrists are the same as Ryu and everybody else. I think, actually. Let me check. Let me make sure. Yeah, so we have a ball peg with the hinge, with the straight peg on top of that, and these are nice and soft and squishy, so you have plenty of good range for that, and it's very nicely hidden. For the torso, we have a single ball peg, which does give him really good range. Can lean back really far. I mean, considering how thick he is, it leans back really far. It leans forward really far. I think that's good enough range. That's pretty good. Now this joint is a little bit more loose. It's not floppy, but it's not stiff, so be aware of that. And this could be product variants. I mean, you might have totally different experience with the joints. I don't see anything that looks to be a problem, just tightness and looseness, so that could be different for everybody. It will, of course, rotate and lean side to side, though that is a little bit more limited. The lower torso, same as before, is on a big ball peg, so that whole piece can lean all the way forward. So if you combine the two, you probably want to tuck his hair into his pants, but you can lean him over pretty far. He does look kind of scrunched up like that, but you can do it, so that's good. And then you can lean him back pretty far as well. Again, it gets kind of scrunchy, but it can happen, so he does have range. You can see inside. Hey, maybe I can see the shoulder joints from in there. Yeah, it looks like the shoulders are on the same type of thing. So you can lean them back pretty far. You'll just have to be aware of any gapping, but it works really well, so that's good. And then, of course, that'll rotate. It's very stiff for this lower ball peg, though. doesn't really want to rotate. I thought I had it moving last night, but now it doesn't really want to. So, well, be aware of that. That's a very, very stiff lower ball peg, so be careful. The crotch piece is super soft and squishy, so it won't get in the way at all. And you can get the legs out pretty darn far, though I guess it does get in the way some when you go directly out to the side. You still have the same kind of ball peg with a swivel around that, so it's pretty good range. I mean, for being this big of a figure, it's not too bad. Well, I guess it does bunch up a little bit more than is desirable. So yeah, I guess be aware of that. I don't see any way around it. I mean, he's got big trunks, so they had to do that somehow, and he's super bulky, so it's a little bit limiting, but you should be able to pose him for the most part. Thigh swivel works just fine. Double jointed knees, let's see. Let's do it on this side. Yeah, a little bit better than 90, so for a big guy like that, that is not too bad. It's not the best looking knee in the world, but it's definitely okay, so that's pretty good. It's very interesting to see how they handled this bulky guy. I think for the most part it's really good. I do really like the ankles. We have our standard ankle hinge, which we've seen before. So they go pretty far back, not super far, and maybe you can get it even a little bit farther, but it's very stiff, which is good for the ankle, so it doesn't allow the figure to fall over too far. It goes very far forward, so I like that. And then we have a really nice toe hinge. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. It does have a little bit of an ankle rocker because just like before, it's on a ball peg. So you can do a little bit. Not a whole lot, but probably enough. So yeah, I'm very pleased with it. You know, we do have some limitations. If anybody didn't expect some limitations for somebody this bulky, they didn't have reasonable expectations. It's going to happen. You can't avoid that. But I think overall, it's a success. It might be my favorite figure from the line so far. I don't know. It does have those limitations, but they did do a really good job in some other places. So I'm very, very pleased with it overall. And I think you guys will be too. If you're collecting the line, definitely pick this one up. You know, there are some issues. Like I said, be aware of the tightness and whatever. But the whole chest thing, it's not that big of a deal. Once you get imposed and once you look at it for a couple seconds, you don't even really notice it. So I think it's okay. I think you guys are going to be okay with the issues and definitely be okay with the good stuff because the good stuff is just fantastic. So I give it my seal of approval. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.